Okay, so I want to talk about the basic concepts behind ER diagrams, which are entity relationship diagrams. And all they are is another way of representing the tables and fields in a database. So there's a lot of different ways to demonstrate that, but an ER diagram is an important way to do that. Before we get to that, I want to talk about this notation, or this way of representing a table and fields. So this particular notation shows the table name here, in this case cars, and then you have parentheses, and the fields would go inside there, separated by commas. So this cars table has VIN number field, make field, model, year. Each of those fields in that table are inside the parentheses there. And you can probably guess the one that's underlined is going to be the primary key field. So again, this notation, which we will take to an ER diagram, the table name is out here, the field names go inside the parentheses, and the primary key will be underlined. So let's look at one more example of that, and then we'll get to some of the ER diagram shapes. So here's just another table and fields, right? So we've got a customers table. Inside the parentheses we have fields for customer name, address, email, etc. Only difference in this one is we have two primary key fields. So the underline again just tells us that, and I guess in this case we might have several customers with the same name, so maybe customer name and address would make up a unique primary key, so those are underlined. So that's a type of notation that's going to sort of lead to the ER diagram in a moment. So in ER diagramming, you need to know some shapes to represent the tables and fields. So a rectangle in ER diagram represents the table or the entity. So if we wanted to represent that customers table, we would draw a square for a rectangle for that. The other shape for the fields or the attributes is that oval shape. So tables are drawn as rectangles, and the various fields in those tables are drawn as ovals. Since we're dealing with ER diagrams, they're also called entities and attributes. So let's look at an example of how that works. We'll get to the relationships in a moment, but for now, let's just see how we would take that notation we looked at earlier and represent it as an ER diagram, or with the proper ER diagram shapes. So notice table name goes inside the square, the field names go in the ovals. Just like before, you underline the primary key, so if any of these fields are part of the primary key, you would underline the field name. I guess the only other thing to note is just kind of the connectors, and those can go in different directions. You know, if you have a diagram that's full of stuff, you might have another table down here, so you could have the fields from this table going over here. But in any case, somebody looking at this diagram can see that this is the table name, and these are the fields that are found in that table.